Russia is denying one of its warships was seriously damaged following a drone attack on a key Russian naval base. But these pictures may actually tell a different story. These social media images appear to show a crippled vessel listing heavily in the Black Sea. And take a look at this. This footage allegedly captures the approaching drone. A Ukrainian source says that Kyiv is responsible. The port is just across the water from Russian-occupied Crimea, where Moscow says it thwarted a separate overnight attack. The Novorossiysk drone strike comes just days after the Ukrainian president warned the war will gradually return to Russia. As Nick Payton-Walsh reports, it may be a sign of Moscow's increasing vulnerability when it comes to defending its own territory.
It's yet another sign of the vulnerability of parts of Russia's military establishment that must have considered themselves, frankly, impregnable. Novorossiysk, a Black Sea port where images show a Ukrainian, it seems, overwater drone approaching the Olenegorsk Gornyak boat, where Ukraine says potentially 100 Russian personnel were at the time of an explosion caused by just short of half a metric ton of TNT. Just a massive force of a blast. Now, clearly a military target hit there, a sign by Ukraine that they can hit parts of Russia that were thought far out of their reach. This possibly hundreds of miles travelled by a Ukrainian drone, and also two indications that perhaps an oil storage facility at Feodosia, kind of on the other side of that Gulf, may have been hit as well. Ukrainian officials simply suggesting that that target was indeed inevitable at some point. But exactly what I think Vladimir Putin does not want to see right now, after a similar underwater drone attack on the Kerch Bridge recently, the key infrastructure connecting Russia's mainland to the Crimean Peninsula that they annexed in 2014 after attacks on Moscow, the drone attacks on the Kremlin, exactly a sign of Russia's increasing vulnerability inside its motherland during this war dragging on. The counter-offensive in the south raging, certainly, but these attacks showing that the war is going far from to plan for Russia. Back to you.
U.S. Republican presidential candidate Chris Christie made a surprise trip to Kyiv today, where he met with Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky. The former New Jersey governor also visited Bucha, a once-occupied town outside of the capital where Russian forces are accused of war crimes. Christie has defended America's support for Ukraine. And his unannounced trip underscores sharp divisions, not only within the Republican Party over Washington's support for Ukraine, but possibly within the broader U.S. population as well. A new CNN poll conducted by SSRS shows that 55% of Americans don't think Congress should authorize additional funding for Kyiv. They think that America's actually already done its part, while 45% say that it should. U.S. and European officials are concerned that American politics could play a big role in the trajectory of Vladimir Putin's war. Sources tell CNN the Russian leader is taking the 2024 presidential election into account, and he's hoping that a Joe Biden loss would cause Washington to curb its support for Kyiv and improve Russia's negotiating position. But sources say there's no explicit evidence to back this up. CNN's Kylie Atwood joins us live now from Washington. So Kylie, it does beg the question, what happens to lethal and non-lethal aid to Ukraine if Donald Trump wins next year?
Well, I think that is the ultimate question, right? Because the former president, who is the leading contender on the Republican side in this primary that we're seeing play out right now for the presidential election, Trump hasn't committed to supporting Ukraine in this war specifically. He's even said that, he could resolve the war in 24 hours if he were in office. Of course, that comment has drawn quite a bit of criticism. But our reporting here is that U.S. officials, European officials, are quite concerned that President Putin is watching those comments closely, and essentially that it's incentivizing him to draw out his approach to the war, staying in the war in Ukraine, past the 2024 elections, sort of banking on the possibility that if President Biden loses to Trump or one of the other Republicans, that U.S. support for Ukraine would decrease, and therefore that would benefit visit Putin. Now, as you said earlier, it's not like there is a concrete intelligence assessment of Putin's mindset here. This is just what U.S. officials are thinking about right now. And when you talk to them about this, what they say is that it makes it even more important for the U.S. to continue to provide support to Ukraine now and also long-term support to Ukraine, so that even if there is a changeover and maybe in the long term, some U.S. support does decrease, that the Ukrainians still have what they need on the battlefield.
All right, Kylie Atwood, live for us there. Thank you so much.